Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 54 of the PD Sports Podcast. It has been a while between episodes, but we're back today, ready to go. As you can see on your screen or through your audio waves, Damo is here with me. How you going, mate?
Yeah, not bad, mate, not bad. We will say, as a disclaimer, if you hear some hiccups from me, I'm currently the only person in the world that I've ever known to be suffering from hiccups bad enough to have medication for them. So if you hear that throughout the episode, I do apologise. But apart from that, mate, I'm good. How about yourself?
Yeah, can't complain. Ready to dive straight back into our Premier League preview. So, a bit of an interesting one today with sort of that lower mid-table. So, probably more of the suggestions on how we're going to get some of these teams out of the trouble they're in. And it's been interesting. Obviously, it's been a while since we've spoken in this sort of realm. So, obviously, this transfer window's open since the last episode as well. So, we can probably delve into some of the signings that have happened for some of these teams or some of the lack of signings as well to see how that's going to impact them going into next season, which is only a month away now. We're 4 weeks out, so exciting times ahead. What do you reckon? You just dive straight in?
Yeah, let's go, mate. Let's get it out of the way. Let's do it.
All right. So the first team on today's radar is Aston Villa. So they're one who I think have been sort of better for the transfer window.
Yep.
They've sort of strengthened in some good areas as I'm trying to adjust the camera slightly for you guys. There we go. So, obviously, Boubacar Kamara's come in, and I think they've also brought in Diego Carlos as well, haven't they, at the back? So, it'll be interesting to see, because they do have a good sort of contingent of centre-backs already, whether Boubacar Kamara is actually going to play in the midfield for Villa. But I think they've probably one of the better sides in this sort of window or area of the transfer where they've actually strengthened really well very early. So, what have your early takes been of Villa?
Well, I just feel like Villa have just come out and said, we know exactly what we need, we know exactly what we not want, and we're going to go out there and pay for it. And I feel like Gerrard already had that already pre-planned and just shows the forward thinking, forward movement. I expect them to do a lot better than, the last season gone. I expect them to be towards that top half of the mid-table. And the main reason because of that is just, it looks like there is a definite plan there at Villa. And the philosophy is slowly becoming involved in Gerrard's thinking of how the football club should be run. On top of that, though, my only worry with Villa is even though they made all these signings, it's going to be the same old problems where they get themselves in the game. There'll be 5 to 10 minutes of madness and next minute they're down. And if they can eke that out of their game, they're going to be quite a strong side next year with the squad they have. Because if you look at the squad they've got, there's a lot of dangerous footballers there that are very explosive, very quick, and can cause trouble for anyone on their day. With that being said, to get themselves out of the trouble they're in is just consistency. The only way you're going to build consistency is get the group in together early, do a big pre-season, get them playing games together. And, another year under Gerrard in this mid-table sort of realm, even if it's towards the lower half, is not a bad thing. Because then the third season, I expect them to really maybe even push for European, Europa League, the second league there that's escaped my mind, whatever
Conference.
it's called. Yeah, that's the one. No one cares about it, but that's probably a big step for Villa if they were to sneak into there. But I think that's 2 years away. This year's all about getting the right pieces of the jigsaw, which I believe they've made 2 fantastic signings at the back. And then from there, they'll strengthen, finish middle to top half this year, and then look for European football in that third season when they're a bit more consistent.
Yeah, and I think out of the teams that we're looking at today, they're probably one team that can really kick on because of the investment at the moment. They've got a core there. They started well. They fell away this year, but I think they're going to be one of those sides that I think is going to at least push for that upper middle table at a minimum and potentially looking at Europe. So this year, I'd say for them, it was just personnel. I think they sort of fell away. When they had their main 11 out there, they did start pretty well this year, but then they sort of, I think as the games sort of piled up and obviously the year that we had, there was refixtures and things like that and all the rest of it. And they just seemed to just die in the arse a bit, sort of around March or so, or February, and then scoring goals became an issue for Villa, and it just, I don't know, Ollie Watkins probably didn't have the year I thought he would have had as well, and they probably thought he would have had a few more returns. Same with Danny Ings. So I think if they can get the best out of those two, they'll be in a lot better position next season. So
I agree. And I think the other thing is they had a few injuries as well throughout. They're scattered through. I don't think they had a full season out of Danny Ings. I think Ollie Watkins had a knock at some point as well. They had a lot of knocks around at the back.
not got the best out of Leon Bailey as well.
Yeah, and I think we also got to remember this was Gerard. Gerard hasn't had a full season yet. Came in.
Yeah.
It was early days, but he did come in. So be interesting to see what he does with a full season as well, and a full transfer period under his his reign. But I think the signs are there very promising for Villa.
Yeah. So keeping in mind who they've already signed, what do you reckon they need to strengthen? I reckon it's another midfielder.
Yeah.
To help out McGinn and Douglas Luiz.
And Coutinho, so...
Yeah, I think Coutinho playing more in the front three than in the midfield three for Gerrard.
I think it depends what Gerrard plays. If he plays that 4-3-1 narrow, you play in the 10. If he plays 4-3-3, you might go out wide and then play Ollie Watkins on the other side with Ings in the middle. And then you're missing Leon Bailey. So I don't know. I feel like Coutinho plays that middle line for Gerrard a lot. It's fullbacks are okay. Centre-backs are good now because they made the two signs they needed to. Keeper's fine as well with Martinez. You might say they might need to dribble a bit more, prolific goal scorer. I feel like when Danny Higgs is fit and firing, he's up there with the best. So, and I feel like Ollie Watkins can chip in too. But if you're being very critical of that Villa side, it's someone that can play 30, 35 games a season, score about 25, 30 goals. But I think everybody in the Premier League looks for that. So if that's the only issue, then I think it's more to how do the boys gel and how do the team progress as a whole.
Yeah, perfect. And that's sort of where I sit too. I think they've got the pieces in place at the moment. They're just got to put it together and get them all out there long enough to make a big 100%. Impact. I think that's the big factor there. So we'll move on from Villa and we'll move up the ladder one more spot to Brentford, which have been a bit of a surprise-ish packet. A lot of people did predict them to go straight down. I think we were pretty strong in the opinion that they would stay, just based on what they've done in the Championship and sort of some of the personnel. And they got some massive points against some big teams this year just based on the way that they played, obviously knocking Arsenal off in that first opening game at home. New stadium was great to see, and I think a lot of it wasn't the dominance of Tony and Mbeumo and Sergi Canos. It was a lot of being rigid at the back, not conceding heaps of goals, but then also making the most of set pieces like throw-ins and those real deeper free kicks, I feel like. So, centre-backs were getting involved, Pinnock was getting assists and whatnot from bloody throw-ins and just being a bit scrappy when they needed to be. But they were really exciting to watch. Ivan Toney, I think he scored 11 or 12 goals this season, which for a first season in the Premier League is more than enough. They'd get goals from Norgard and Sergi Canos and Mbeumo, and there's someone that's escaping my mind that I feel like I should remember that did contribute a little bit. But overall, I was pretty impressed with Brentford this season.
Yeah, I agree. Christian Eriksen was a signing and a half for them too. And I think it's going to go one of two ways for Brentford. It feels very Sheffield United sort of vibes that the second season syndrome could happen here. I hope it doesn't, because me and you, we love a bit of Brentford. But I think the more than likely one that does happen here with Brentford is that they stabilise and they go down the line of what Brighton's currently doing, where they just stabilise, they set themselves in, they build something in the next minute. Okay, we're a Premier League team to stay, and on our day we're going to be really good. And I hope that's the way they go, because they play a good brand of football. For me, for their squad, is that they lack probably Premier League quality. But unlike Villa, they have a squad that's so gelled and so well together. They've got such a good group dynamic and understanding of what they need to do. It helps them stay in the Prem, I think, again next year, and probably helps them finish in and around the same spot they are again. I think there's one player they need to probably look at getting more out of is Mbeumo, who I think put in some good performances, but didn't really turn the numbers that we're probably expecting. But, if you get the same numbers out of Tony, a bit more numbers out of Mbeumo, Pennock's getting assists, back four's done well, Raya doesn't get a long-term injury because he's definitely their best number one. They could even finish higher next year. Yeah,
I'd expect them to be honest. But we haven't seen much of what they've signed. Obviously, Eriksen's not come back, so they need probably strength across all three lines, though, to be honest, if they want to push on. So there needs to be some form of investment from the board in order to keep them up. But obviously, the money that they'd be receiving, you'd like to think that they'd strengthen. They do need a second striker. I think they do tend to play with like Mbeumo off Tony. I'd rather see Mbeumo play more out wide and be a bit more dynamic on the wing rather than through the middle, because he's just not really clinical enough. I think he could be sort of more exploited against fullbacks and being more creative than more of a finisher. So if they could bring another striker in and then slide Mbeumo out to the right, then I think that would sort of support that play a little bit better. I think the best pot that they've got in the team currently is that central midfield. They're really rock solid in there at the moment. So whether they just add a bit of extra quality in there to sort of try and compete for spots and whatnot. And I think defensively, they don't need too much. Obviously, smaller squad. Rico Henry, Pinnock, maybe centre backs. I could probably do with something. I think they got Aya, don't they? He's probably the main one, but they're probably looking at maybe another centre back. But that's sort of where I'd look. I think if you could just get quality, regardless of the position, just good player, good value, and obviously we know Brentford's approach to transfers is very data driven, so they're not going to get too many mistakes there.
I don't think they will, and the way they go about it's just good, and I hope it means that they stay in the Prem for the next few seasons and the foreseeable future. But in saying that, second year syndrome is a thing. We'll just wait to see if it happens to Brentford.
Yeah, 100%. So we'll slide on up to Crystal Palace. Now, this is an interesting one because I feel like their performances maybe overspoke for their finish of the season. So I haven't actually looked at where things went wrong for Palace this year, because I feel like they finished the year really, really strongly. I think the one result that sort of sticks in my mind is the Everton one where they were 2-0 up and threw it away. So whether that's happened on multiple occasions, because I always felt that Crystal Palace were in a lot of games, and for them to finish in this lower mid-table bracket and to be in the middle of that lower mid-table bracket, obviously things didn't go right for Vieira, not overall this year, but in periods this year. But I did feel like a lot of things did go right for them at the same time. Like the performances looked, and the actual play looked really good under Vieira, and some of the numbers, through Edouard and Zaha and Elise and Eze, like they've got a team there that can definitely do a lot of good things. But for them to finish this low down, clearly there's some deficiencies in that squad as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a little bit of just how they're learning to play football under Vieira. They obviously took a punt, Palace, the club, on bringing in someone that's going to play this type of football, and I commend them for it because it looks good. It's definitely a philosophy. There's definitely a direction, and Palace just don't want to be this club that just hangs around the Prem now. They want to actually push on, so I've got to give them credit for that. And I think the football, when they play well, looks good. I think there was a game against Arsenal. We were out, Paul, watching Power, I reckon, a print or something like that, and they played Arsenal, blitzed them in the first half like 3-0. And it was the best football I've ever seen Palace play in my life. And with that one there, that was kind of the template of what Palace can do and could do against teams.
Yeah.
And then you had the Palace that was the Everton Palace towards the end of the season where they just, just implode. The squad itself is not a bad squad. They've got some players.
Yeah,
Elise is a quality player. Edouard is a quality player. Zaha, we know he's a proven quantity in the Prem. For me, it's them. It's defensively. They're going to miss Conor Gallagher. So, interesting to see how they re-strengthen. I feel the Palace board, though, you look at that first season and be like, all right, who do you want? Who do you need? And let's go. Because if they do that, they're finishing top half next year. Inside that finishing the semi-final of the FA Cup, probably not have the best year in the Prem, but if you look at expected points, probably should be a bit higher than where they are.
The squad's probably not as deep as it needs to be, especially with 5 subs this year.
Yeah, if they had a bit more of a better back four, I think Guaita, or however you say the keeper's name.
Guaita, yeah.
He's a little bit whatever for me. I know he pulls off some saves here and there, but I think technically he's a little bit poor as a keeper. So with that being said,
yeah, they've got that Guay at centre-back now who's stepped into that role as well, the former Chelsea centre-back. So he'll be good for them long-term. They've got Mitchell at left-back. So I think that left side of the defence is set. It's about getting that... It's about getting that right side sorted.
And a replacement for Conor Gallagher that's as good as Gallagher, unless Chelsea somehow turn around and say, yeah, we're going to have him on loan again, which would be ludicrous.
I doubt it.
There you go. I doubt it too.
Yeah, so for Palace, I think, again, that's what I think we're going to notice about this sort of mid-table-ish area. Like these 5 clubs, I think a lot of them are there for different reasons, but the response is there's clearly something that they're missing because that's why they're there. Like I know that, we're not sort of throwing out names of people that could be in those spots, but I think Palace's it's more of a defensive issue where Villa's is more of an offensive issue. Brentford's just we need to get a Premier League squad ready to go. So I'm of that same opinion. I think Palace just need to strengthen defensively, and that's, they've got the firepower. They've shown that they can score goals. They've taken points from big teams, Spurs, Arsenal. I think Man City they took points from again this year. So they're capable of knocking the big boys off because they can, create chances for themselves. So I think that's what we'll see from them next season. And again, I'd say they'd sort of finish similar-ish mark next year just because the 5 subs.
Depends on their strength.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the big thing. It's whether they can get, a deeper squad, which who knows in this crazy transfer market. Next one up, there's a big one. Newcastle.
Oh, mate, I love him.
So Sven Botman has already announced now, big centre-back from Lille. So that's a massive signing for Newcastle. This is the one that I'm looking forward to the most this season and seeing the growth, because when Eddie Howe came in, they were like, we're going to get relegated. They were rock bottom, nothing to play with. And to be fair, their January window, yes, Bruno Guimaraes is unreal, and you're not getting that signing unless the takeover happens practically. But they still have to make the signing. They were still floating with relegation when they made that signing. Kieran Trippier, for as good as he was, he didn't play that much in the end because of the injuries. So you can't really say that Trippier was a reason that kept them up. And then you're looking at Chris Wood, who probably underperformed for what he'd done at Burnley, but they've still managed to finish almost literally in the middle of the table from being odds on relegation. So that is a monster turnaround. And now with a window with some backing, could this be a year where you're looking at Newcastle finishing 9, 8, 7?
I'm seeing Newcastle penciling him in at 7th next year. I think that their second half of the year under Eddie Howe, with just a handful of signings they made, was ridiculous. They were top 4 in the Prem second half of the year.
Yeah.
It was mental. Bruno is a great midfielder. Looks great. Jolinson, what a find. Eddie Howe comes in, puts him at centre mid.
Yeah,
what a player.
different player.
Them two together are going to be unbelievable. You're then looking at what they did in goals. We called it on the last podcast. Well, I definitely did. I said Nick Pope's going to end up there.
Yeah.
It's not Nick Pope, it's Pickford. Pope's there now. They've got the best shot stopper in the Premier League now. I just look at their squad and go, if they sign no one from now, I still think they're going to finish in and around that 7th place mark. Thing is, they got plenty of money. They got St. Maxton, they got Chris Wood, they got Callum Wilson coming back fit. They got a midfield too that look unbelievable as well. Throw John Joe Shelby, who's no mug, into the mix as well. He knows how to spray a pass and win a ball back. Back 4 looks better now. You got Trippier, you got obviously Boltman in, you got the keeper in. I feel like they make another centre-back signing and they make another left-back signing and they make, a couple bigger name signings because they can. Their team, that under Eddie Howe, is going to finish top 7 next year.
Yeah. And that's where I've sort of got them. I got them floating in that, pushing for Europa League, probably finishing Conference League overall for next year. But I think they're just... goals is still an issue. So that they defensively were so good last year, but they weren't putting numbers against teams. And I think between Wilson, because Wilson, you can't bank on Wilson. Everyone, he's had 5 years now of consistent double-digit seasons where it hasn't kicked on because he doesn't play the minutes that a number 9, a number 1, number 9 needs to play. So if he's your second option, with Wood as your third option, and they go and get the 15-a-goal season striker that plays more, then they're dangerous. Because, St. Maximin, for as good as he is, we know he doesn't put numbers up. He's a flair player that will do something out of nothing, you create an opportunity. It might not be a goal or an assist, but it creates the chance because he'll do something ridiculous at the halfway line, burn 3, and then plays the pass to the assist, or because his numbers have never been fantastic, and he's not going to just magically turn into a 10 and 10 winger or a 5 and 10 winger, because that's just not him. He does really audacious things, and a lot of the time it doesn't come off. He does things and you're like, it looks awesome, But then there's like his end product is the big issue with St. Maximin. So
Yeah.
I think as the team gets better, his numbers will naturally get better too, though, because there's more issues to deal with. So it's not just stop St. Maximin, stop Newcastle. But they need to strengthen around him so that he's now no longer the one guy creating everything. So that's, for me, where Bruno's obviously stepped in. But with Bruno there, St. Maximin's numbers still didn't really go mental. So, and really they shouldn't need to. If he can kind of be a 9-8 goal and the same sort of, so 16 contributions, I think you're taking that from him.
It's more what he provides in the game, is that teams worry about him so much that he drags players and whatever, and he creates a space for everybody else.
100%.
And like you said, he's assisted to the assist usually. And that doesn't help his numbers, but it helps in the dynamic of how the team plays. And if you give the guy space and time, he will hurt you. I do think that if he has better players around him that the opposition has to worry about more than just him, he will get more goals and assists this season. He might turn into a 10 and 10.
100%.
You got to remember, if Newcastle don't finish 7th or 8th and they finish 10th or 11th this season, that's not a bad year if they're building.
100%.
Because then that third season is fine. And then that third season is what you look towards. So it is one of those ones where if they strengthen more, you can dare to dream at finishing in Europe, which would be cool. And I think they can do it. It's just important to see who they sign from here on. What are the core they keep? Because I do think they need to keep some of this core. And then from there off they go. I think a lot comes down if Callum Wilson stays fit, for goodness sake, for once in his life. He could score 25 to 30 goals this season, and that's a big thing to say. But I think Callum Wilson, with the amount of service he would get, knowing how proven he is when he is in front of goals and he takes penalties, if he stays fit for 35, 40, 38 games a season, my word.
Yeah, he'd be at least pushing that 20 at a minimum with the chances they're going to get created around him. And I think maybe it's that left side. So they've got the dude from Norwich. What was his name again? Left back. Aarons?
Oh,
is it Aarons?
Yeah.
Max Aarons. So they've got... No, he's the right back. I can't remember who the left back was. Oh, no, I'm not going to... I know exactly who it is, but I can't remember his name now.
English, isn't it?
Yeah, he's English. But regardless, we know he will provide... Lewis. Is it Jamal Lewis?
Jamal Lewis.
Yeah. So we know Jamal Lewis is, good enough at this level. He just hasn't done it on a consistent basis. So they had Matt Targett come in on loan as well. I don't know if he's signed permanently. That's probably something to look into. But I think, right back, obviously, Kieran Trippier, if he can stay fit, is a massive option for them. But again, I think the ceiling for them is finishing in Europe, which is crazy. And the floor is the sort of mid-table again. So, end of the day, they're not going to be loitering with relegation. They're not going to be in the danger, I don't think, unless it just all goes pear-shaped. But I can't see that happening. So if you're a Newcastle supporter, I think you're probably 6 months ahead of schedule because of the turnaround that they had from January.
100%.
Yeah. So our last team for today, which was one of the teams that I'm being most excited to kind of pick apart because it's been 12 months of just what the hell's happened here. But Wolves, since losing Nuno, really, he hasn't felt the same with Wolves. I don't know. They play very similar, but he just hasn't had the same aura. And obviously Jimenez hasn't been the same, I don't think, since his unfortunate injury. Damo leaving in January, you lose a spark there. Defensively, they've still been good though, I'd say. And we were talking about Wolves all the way up to the run-in, really, weren't we? Talking about how they could get into Europe. So, end of the day, it's not the end of the world. Like, they finished 10th, but we were talking about Wolves potentially finishing like 6th. Their last 5 games, they lost 3 and drew 2. So, they just fell apart at the end of the season. And in a clump of teams who finished within... So, from 6th, it was 7 points from 10th to 6th. And when you're not winning any of those last 5 games, you can see how that they've finished where they've finished. So, again, the narrative of this 5-team bracket here, so from 14th to 10th, was all about quality and staying fit. Because all of these teams really have squads capable, maybe bar Brentford, have squads capable of finishing 9, 8, 7th.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
Yeah, so Wolves, for me, again, it's goals. Fabio Silva, for as much as we love him from an FM perspective, hasn't really had the time, I don't think, in these 2 years to play.
He hasn't given it much.
Yeah, and like Hwang Hee-chan came in this year and was okay. He wasn't dreadful. I remember we played on the last game of the season, obviously, against Wolves, and if his shooting boots were on, we would not have won that game because he had 2 massive chances early against Liverpool to really put us to bed at 1-0 already. Pardon?
That's his issue, bro. He's done that throughout the season when you watch him play.
Yeah, not being clinical.
Good areas, but he's not clinical. I think if it's Fabio Silva that you're thinking of, he hasn't been given enough time to grow into being a Premier League striker. I think there's one there.
He needs to go on loan.
I think the Raul Jimenez one is interesting. Do you sell your best player at a point where you can get good money for him, knowing that his best years could be behind him now after watching the season of the one that he had, which is harsh, but maybe that's what you do to give Silva more game time, stand a bit more consistent game time to see if he's really at the level. Because I think the verdict's still out if he's or isn't.
Yeah.
Does that give you the impetus to improve this squad? I think if you look at Wolves, the biggest problem they had was losing Nuno, and they probably lost the dynamic of the group that they had. Portuguese group under Nuno, all firing on four cylinders, knowing exactly what they want to do. Yes, they've done well to try and mirror it, but it's a different feel and a different way of play. I think for them, their biggest player is going to be Neto. If Neto's fit, they can get Fabio Silva going. The squad would be good enough because Connor Cody, Jose Sarr is one of the best keepers in the Prem.
Yeah, Bolly's been good.
Bolly's been good.
Coutinho, Neves.
They've got a team that is good enough. I think they might lose Neves.
Then Donker.
I feel like if I'm Wolves, I'm turning around and looking at that squad and going, if I lose Neves and I lose Jimenez this window for big money, like if Neves leaves, I'm asking 80 plus mil. Declan Rice is going to go for that much, right?
Yeah.
I'm then turning around going, who do we need? Who do we want? Who do we rebuild? Off we go. And if you want to play this 3-5-2 for 5-3-2, whatever they play, that 5 at the back system, they sometimes play with a wide men of like a 5, 2-2-2-1, whatever. Who do we need? For me, it's
Gibbs White comes back as well. Yeah, that's big. True. He had a really good year at Sheffield. So that's another creative midfielder that's coming back.
Yeah. Agree.
It's just not a position they need. That's the other thing.
I feel like they should sell up.
Yeah.
And go, all right, let's refresh the squad a little bit because it's getting a bit stale.
Yeah, I agree.
I know you're losing Jimenez, and I know you're losing Neves. You're losing Neves for top dollar. You will find someone that's going to be as good in and around. That is going to be cheaper for you and be a good investment. For me, it's a Jimenez one, and I'll be like, you know what? You don't buy a 9. You let Fabio Silva play in the 9, get Neto on the left, and you buy a right winger. And that's what you buy. And if you can find a very tricky right winger with Neto on the left-hand side and Fabio Silva up top, you're going to have that extra little bit of diamonds and then what Jimenez is. And I'm not writing Jimenez off, and I still think he had a good season for what he has, but it's not the Jimenez involved with that injury. I feel like if there's a team out there that wants to pay 30, 35, 40 million for him, you just go.
You take the money.
Thank you.
He's on the other side of 30 already as well, I think.
Yeah,
so.
you thank you for your services, and off you go. You know what? And Jimenez could get a move to another Premier League club and do well. Like, if I'm Newcastle and I want to be deadly serious, I would take a year on Jimenez.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? So...
Proven finisher.
That's it. But...
Or Brentford.
That's a good shout. Him
and Tony. Because Tony's athletic. Like, Tony's really deceptive. Jimenez is your bigger, quote, striker. Yep. Although Tony is a big boy. But he's like very Tammy Abraham-like, where he can run channels and be a bit more explosive. But he's probably better, actually, to be fair, than Abraham, using his body, not as a finisher, but using his body.
I've got a shout for Jimenez should go, but it won't happen. David Moyes should look at him at West Ham and be like, a year or 2 years out of you, mate, and then we're in the Champions League.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that happening, especially with West Ham. They've been needing a striker now for a couple of years too. Could see that working, and that allows them to use Antonio in a bit of a different role as well. So we can definitely talk about that in the next.
Naturally. Yeah,
or put him out wide, role. Bowen. Maybe one of them up front with a Jimenez.
Yeah,
that'd be cool.
But I think Wolves have options, and that's why I think they always will finish around this mark, is that the squad's too good not to. But I just don't think after Nuno leaving, the squad's got a little bit stale. I feel like they need to sell a couple just to reinvest in areas.
Yeah.
But I don't know. For me, Ruben Neves is one of those guys that always gets linked to everywhere, never gets a bid. So we'll wait and we'll see.
Yeah. So out of these group of 5, I think we could probably unanimously say Newcastle's the one that's got the ceiling to well exceed what they've done. So out of the 4, because we'll take Newcastle out because it's a bit unfair, which one of Villa, Brentford, Palace, Wolves do you see turning it around the best for next season?
Palace. Just because I think the philosophy's there and they get the right signings, they're going to be really good. Lise, Edward, Zaha, midfield would be interesting to see if they play with Gallagher. Decent-ish back 4, but I feel like it could strengthen. I just feel like there's a bigger base there. I feel like Villa's also in the same queue and the signs they've made.
Villa, you're relying on unknown, and that's where I've been tossing up. It's how do new signings gel? Sometimes it works, sometimes it's dreadful. So that's why I was thinking Palace or Villa, but I was leaning Palace. Yeah.
The only one that can go the other way is Brentford, just because they might not have the quality and it might show next year, but we'll see.
And then Wolves are a real unknown as well, because we don't know. Like, for me, when I look at Fabio Silva, it's interesting because if they hadn't seen enough of him, I feel like he would have gone on loan by now.
No.
So clearly they see something that they want to keep him in the squad. Like, there's no reason. If you didn't know and you wanted him to play, he would have gone back to Porto. Like, that's how 100%. I see it. Like, they would have said, we want you, but keep playing regularly. Like, he could have been. This is what frustrates me, because he really could have been playing Champions League football these last 2 years with Porto and still getting better for it whilst being at Wolves. So they've clearly got something in the realm that they're going to use him. Like, otherwise they've just absolutely stunted 2 years of his growth,
which makes no sense for a class footballer.
Yeah. So, like, what is for a 40 million 17-year-old at the time that hasn't really started in 2 years, when's it going to happen? Because you gotta give it a go. Like, I know they've had options there, but surely he plays ahead of Hwang Hee-chan. I just didn't get it this year. Like, it didn't make sense. What's the purpose of having him?
Yeah, I hear you.
But anyway, that's just me with Wolves. I think.
Yeah, I think it's
Wolves are never going to be a team, I think, that are going to blow people away. They're going to always be defensively solid. They're always going to have a good goal, well, not even a good goal difference, a close to 0 goal difference, because the good teams will pump them and then they will chip away at the middle to lower teams. They're not a team that typically score 3s and 4s regularly. They're a very 2-0, 2-1, 1-0 type team, and I see them doing that again this year. And they're probably one team that I don't see fighting for Europe, because I just don't think... I think they're going to have that little mini decline that then forces the rebuild the year after.
Yeah, I agree. And it's going to be interesting to see how all of these teams go. But Wolves are the most unknown. Newcastle's got the highest ceiling. Brentford has the one that's got the most potential to go as wayward as from this position as possible. But we'll wait and we'll see. And that's the beauty of it. I love pre-season for it. There's been signings. We've got a few of them right on the pod. So it's going to be an interesting next 4 weeks. Yeah,
100%. So we've got plenty to cover still over the next couple of weeks. And I think once we do our final, like the top 4 preview, I think it'll be good for us to do a bit of a predicted table, just to give us some reference to next season. Obviously, World Cup sort of in the middle of this year is going to make things interesting. So teams that have a higher proportion of players going to that tournament are going to need to utilise some rotation, where some of those middle teams, like your Crystal Palaces, they're not going to have many people going to the World Cup. So seasons for them could be really beneficial, because they'll get a 3 or 4 week block where they can continue training and staying in that mindset and playing friendly. I'm expecting to see friendlies, off the back of the World Cup as well. So I'm feeling like teams like Brighton and Palace and whatever that aren't going to have heaps of players get called up to the World. Even Wolves, to be fair, because Portugal didn't make it. So they're not going to have that interruption the same way like we're going to have that interruption in City and Chelsea, where the player, like big proportions of those better squads are going to lose players, and they're going to be playing more football than this middle bracket team. Even Newcastle, to be fair, don't have many players representing nations in World Cup. So that's what's going to be interesting for me, I think. From those five, that's probably all I've got to comment on. Any final thoughts, Dame?
Not much when it comes to those five. Obviously, we've done now the first bottom half of the table. So the next top half is going to be a bit more interesting about who can push on and who can challenge and etc. And it's definitely been some signings that we have to talk about when we get to those teams. City and Liverpool definitely made some signings, some re-signings, which has definitely been good. And at the same time as well, Paul, it's probably not amiss to say that there is other sport on at the minute. We definitely are well aware of it as well. Just with this much Premier League stuff going on, we obviously keep it very Premier League based. But I want to bring up the fact that we've had Kyrgios beat Tsitsipas last night. De Minaur's in the fourth round as well. It's the first time in a recent memory we've had a couple of Australian men players, Kubler as well, make the fourth round. So that's awesome. Tomamovic on the other side and Wimbledon making it as well. So even without Ash Barty, we still got a woman in the second round, the second week, which is great. And then you're looking at other sport as well. You had the Live Golf breakaway that was successful.
Yeah, it's mental.
PGA, which is mental, the money going around. And you have other sport as well. You got Travis Head taking 4 wickets and 17 balls in the cricket against Sri Lanka, which
in the series that we're expecting to do well.
Gives me and Paul hope that, down the line, we're going to have 5-wicket haul in us next year.
Yeah.
But we have plenty of other sport, and we'll keep up to date with that, of course. But
and the footy's been unbelievable. Like, we need to start doing more AFL as well for our Aussie listeners, because this season, man, is just unreal. As a punter, you would not want to be a punter this year, because teams are knocking teams off and things are just going mental, and somehow Port have found some continuity with a big one today. Pardon?
North Melbourne are horrid, so don't get around them.
Could have predicted that one from the start of the year.
I think we could have too. And there's just been so many teams that just go and turn up on the day and beat another side and just be like, hello, where did that come from?
Or for me, the best one was bloody Essendon last week, went and lost to West Coast over in Perth, and then turn up and beat Sydney.
Yeah, I know. It was just like, where's that come from? It's been one of those years. It's all been one of those years.
Yeah,
in a lot of sports.
Every sport, even the F1s as well, have been interesting.
Carlos Sainz pole.
Another one. I didn't even see it last night.
Yeah,
so
Carlos Sainz got his first pole last night. So there you go.
There we go. Ferraris are flying. So look, we're probably going to, in the next couple of weeks, probably start doing multiple podcasts. It's just been, we haven't had the time over the last few weeks. Obviously, if you've been following us on socials, you would have noticed my socials were a bit quiet. I've been flat out with some personal things, and Damo's sort of been posting quite a bit, posting some things on his channels as well. So if you want to find out what Damo's been up to, jump over to Damo_23 on all platforms to get that knowledge. And for myself, it's Paulie29 across all platforms. Damo, thank you for your participation this morning. I know it's a shorter one today, but I think short, sharp, shiny, and we move on to the upper mid-table in the next episode.
Yeah, I reckon so. Thank you very much for listening, and no hiccups, Paulie.
I know you did well. I'm very surprised after yesterday's escapades.
Yeah. Jeez.
Alrighty, well, if you want to follow us on those other platforms, once again, links are in the description of this video and of the podcast, depending on what your listening style has been for this episode. But obviously, Damo is Damo_23 across Twitch, YouTube, and Twitter, and I'm Paulie29 across those platforms. The Stadium Discord link is in the description of both as well, and we'll see you very, very shortly, hopefully, for the next Premier League preview of the mid-table.